April, Cycle 9 of the Galactic Alliance year. Outer Rim Station L-47, orbiting a pale blue world the locals called Asherin. The mess hall had never been quiet before. It was a place of constant chatter, aliens from a dozen species trading stories, laughing at each other's odd eating habits and arguing over research credits. The air always carried the scents of sweet Zelvan nectar, bitter Terran coffee, and the sulfur-rich stew of the Dravkari. But on that day, the moment Dr. Nahal stepped through the automatic doors, every sound cut off. It wasn't because she was human. Humans were rare here, yes, but not unknown. The Alliance had assigned a handful of Earth scientists and soldiers to the frontier stations as liaisons. They were tolerated, sometimes welcomed, sometimes mocked. Nahal herself was already known among the researchers as brilliant but eccentric. What silenced the room was what followed her. Three small creatures padded in at her heels, their iridescent scales shifting colors like living rainbows. Their wide, multifaceted eyes reflected the overhead lights in shards of violet, silver, and green. They were no bigger than Earth housecats, but their movements were unnervingly precise, coordinated. Zapirian cubs. Commander Adnan nearly dropped his mug of synthetic coffee. He had been stationed on L-47 for 5 years, serving as the human liaison, smoothing over cultural clashes, explaining Earth's strange habits to curious aliens. In all that time, he had never seen anything like this. Zapirians were one of the fiercest species in the Alliance. Their young were sacred, kept hidden, protected, raised only within tightly controlled clan enclosures on their distant homeworld. No one outside their species had ever been allowed near them, let alone seen them casually trotting through a mess hall behind a human. Yet here they were. Nahal walked with her usual calm, her dark hair tied back, her eyes bright with focus. She carried a tray and began moving down the serving line as if nothing unusual was happening. The cubs followed in perfect formation, one on her left, one on her right, the smallest trailing directly behind. Their scales pulsed faintly in rhythm with her steps, like 3 small suns locked into orbit. A Dravkari engineer hissed a curse. A Zelvan biologist leaned forward so far his antennae nearly touched the table. A pair of Ustral technicians froze mid-bite, their translucent jaws clicking in confusion. Adnan rose to his feet, heart pounding. "Dr. Nahal," he called, his voice tight. She turned, blinking as if surprised anyone was paying attention. "Commander." He gestured toward the cubs, who had halted when she stopped. Their eyes tracked her with almost unnerving devotion. "Perhaps we should discuss your companions." Nahal's lips curved into a smile, bright and utterly unfazed. "Oh, these 3, they're remarkable specimens." She set her tray down at the nearest table, and the cubs instantly rearranged themselves into a triangular formation around her feet. "I've been studying their bonding behaviors for the past 6 months. The smallest cub gave a soft trill, scales rippling with silver-green waves. Nahal reached absently into her pocket and produced 3 glowing berries, offering one to each cub in turn. They accepted the food delicately, their movements synchronized, their eyes never leaving her. The room watched in frozen disbelief. Zapirian literature was clear. Their young were wild, untamable, and fiercely territorial. Even adult Zapirians rarely handled cubs outside their own clans. Yet here they were, calm, obedient, content to eat from a human's hand. Adnan approached slowly, aware of the dozens of eyes on him. "Doctor," he said quietly, lowering his voice, "do you have any idea what this means?" Nahal's gaze softened as she stroked the smallest cub's scaled head. "Of course I do. It means the old texts were wrong. It means interspecies bonds can form at levels we never imagined." "Or it means," Adnan countered, "that you've just given the Zapirian Council a reason to exile you, or worse." For the first time, a flicker of tension crossed her face. But then she straightened, her tone calm, certain. "Unprecedented doesn't mean forbidden. If anything, this proves that empathy is stronger than tradition. These little ones chose me. That is a truth no council decree can erase." The cubs trilled again, as if echoing her words. Their scales shifted in a pulse of protective gold, a signal Adnan had only ever seen adult warriors display. The largest fixed its glowing eyes on him, and for a moment he felt an almost physical weight pressing on his chest. A warning, a test. Nahal clicked her tongue softly. The cub relaxed instantly, curling up beside her chair. The silence in the mess hall was suffocating. Then, slowly, voices began to rise again. Mutters, whispers, the crackle of data slates recording. The story of what they had seen would spread across the station within hours. Adnan leaned close, his words for her ears alone. Nahal, listen to me. The council will hear of this, and when they do, they won't just be curious. They'll be afraid. Nahal's hand lingered on the smallest cub, whose scales shimmered with spirals of blue and green, patterns Adnan had never seen before. The cub pressed against his hand, and to his shock, he felt the warmth of its trust. They shouldn't be afraid, Nahal whispered. This isn't a threat, it's an invitation. Adnan opened his mouth to reply, but at that moment the mess hall doors hissed open again. A Zapirian delegation entered, their armored scales gleaming like knives. At their center strode High Matriarch Belter herself, her patterns shifting with cold authority. Her multifaceted gaze locked instantly on Nahal and the cubs at her feet. The entire hall fell silent once more. The High Matriarch moved like a storm given flesh. Her scales shifted in a cascade of deep crimson edged with steel gray, each color ripple a signal of displeasure. The armored guards flanking her walked in perfect formation, their clawed feet striking the mess hall floor with a rhythm that made the room vibrate. Every species present, Dravkari, Zelvan, Ustral, and human alike, instinctively drew back, as if the air itself warned them to keep distance. Adnan felt his throat tighten. He had seen Zapirian warriors before, but never Belter herself. She was one of the oldest and most respected matriarchs in the council, her authority stretching far beyond her own clan. If she had come in person, the matter was already beyond rumor or curiosity. It was judgment. Her multifaceted eyes scanned the hall. Conversations had died in an instant. Plates clattered as nervous hands set them down. No one dared to move. Then her gaze fell on Nahal. The cubs reacted before anyone else. The largest shifted upright, its scales flashing a molten gold pattern of protective alertness. The other two fanned out, their small bodies trembling but firm, placing themselves between Nahal and the approaching delegation. The sight alone was enough to draw sharp intakes of breath from several Zapirian researchers in the crowd. Cubs defending a human, an act so unthinkable it bordered on sacrilege. Nahal rose slowly. She did not bow, though she gave the respectful incline of her head taught in every diplomatic manual. "High Matriarch," she said, voice calm but steady. "Welcome to Station L47. The matriarch stopped only a few steps away. Her towering frame cast a long shadow across Nahal's table. "Dr. Nahal of Earth." Her voice carried through the hall, translated but resonant, the underlying harmonics vibrating in the bones. "You presume to take what is not yours." Nahal held her gaze. "I have taken nothing. These cubs chose me. They bonded through months of care and study. No deception, no force, only trust." Murmurs rippled across the hall. Some sounded disbelieving, others awed. Belter's scales darkened further, deepening to a shade Adnan recognized as contempt. "Zapirian young are clan-bound. It is written in the first codex. No outsider may ever be acknowledged as kin, yet these three display patterns of allegiance. They treat you as clanmother." The cubs trilled, almost as if confirming the claim. The smallest padded forward, stopping just short of Belter's claws, and let out a soft chirp. Its scales shimmered in spirals of emerald and blue, the same strange pattern Adnan had seen earlier. The matriarch froze. For a long, terrible moment no one breathed, then her mandibles clicked once sharply. "Impossible." Nahal crouched, her movements unhurried, and stroked the cub's back. "Not impossible, simply new." She looked up, meeting Belter's gaze without flinching. "Your own laws speak of adaptation. The Cub Codex says their patterns evolve in response to their environment. Perhaps the cubs are teaching us that family can be wider than blood." The hall erupted in hushed voices. Adnan caught the words heresy, blasphemy, and unprecedented. Belter raised one clawed hand and silence fell again, her eyes glinted unreadable. "Your words are dangerous, human. Tradition is the spine of our survival. Without it, we are dust. And yet," she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous hum, "if what you claim is true, then the council must decide. You and the cubs will come with me." Adnan stepped forward before he realized it. "With respect, High Matriarch, Dr. Nahal is under Alliance jurisdiction. She is not your prisoner." Belter's eyes flicked toward him. "Silence, liaison. You speak of law, I speak of bond. Which is stronger, I wonder?" The largest cub hissed, its scales flashing a warning red. The two others joined it, trilling in defiance. The mess hall's atmosphere was now a powder keg. One wrong movement and the cubs might attack. And if they did, the Zapirian guards would cut them down in an instant. Nahal stood, placing a hand between her companions and the matriarch. If I go, they come with me. If they go, I go with them. We are bound. Belter tilted her head, studying her with unnerving stillness. Then at last she gave a low rumble. So be it. But know this, the council does not look kindly on trespass into sacred ground. If your presence is a corruption, you will be judged. If it is truth, her voice dropped, heavy as stone. Then you will change everything. She turned sharply, her guards forming a wall around her. The delegation swept from the hall, leaving behind silence so thick it choked. Adnan exhaled only when the doors hissed shut. He turned to Nahal, his voice low and urgent. Do you have any idea what you've just agreed to? She stroked the cub nearest her, who pressed against her leg with a soft hum. Yes, she said simply. I agreed to stand by them. Adnan's gut twisted. He knew what the council was like, cold, rigid, ruthless in defense of tradition. A trial would not be a fair debate. It would be theater, a spectacle meant to remind the galaxy that no one broke Zapirian law. Not even a human scientist with the trust of 3 cubs. The thought chilled him, but when he looked at Nahal, her eyes glowed not with fear but resolve. The cubs pressed closer around her, their patterns shimmering as one. The Zapirian delegation's vessel loomed at the docking bay like a dark blade suspended in the void. Its hull shimmered with living metal, scales that shifted with patterns only its crew could read. To outsiders, the ship looked more like a beast than a machine, half alive, half forged. Nahal stood at the base of the boarding ramp with the 3 cubs clustered around her. The smallest pressed close to her leg, scales flickering in nervous pulses of violet and silver. The largest stood forward, tail stiff, its pattern a protective gold that warned all nearby not to come too close. Commander Adnan adjusted his collar uneasily. He had tried in vain to persuade her not to go. Nahal, he muttered, leaning toward her, this isn't just research anymore. The council won't see your bond as science. They'll see it as contamination, a violation of their deepest traditions. She met his eyes with quiet determination. Then let them. If tradition is so fragile that compassion can shatter it, maybe it needs to be shattered. Adnan exhaled, muttering something in Urdu under his breath. He had heard stubborn humans before, but Nahal carried a kind of resolve that unsettled even him. She wasn't naive, she knew the risks, but something stronger than fear was guiding her. The High Matriarch's guards motioned sharply. It was time. As they boarded, Adnan's gaze swept across the docking bay one last time. Station personnel had gathered in clusters, watching silently. Some bowed their heads in respect, others turned away, unwilling to be seen supporting something so dangerous. Rumors were already flying through the Alliance channels, humans tamming Zapirian young, a human clanmother, whispers of heresy. The interior of the ship was dim, lit by bioluminescent veins running along the walls. The air carried a faint metallic tang, like copper and ozone. The cubs moved without hesitation, padding softly across the alien deck. Their scales resonated faintly with the ship's living patterns, as if it too recognized them. Belter waited at the center of the command chamber, her armored frame coiled with restrained power. She gave Adnan a single glance before addressing Nahal. You will be confined to quarters until we reach Zafir Prime. The cubs will remain with you. They are volatile. Nahal raised her chin. They stay with me by choice, not by your command. A faint shimmer crossed Belter's scales. Amusement, perhaps, or annoyance. It was impossible to tell. She gave a clipped gesture, and a guard escorted them down a curving corridor to a small chamber. Quarters. The room was sparse. A low bed, a nutrient dispenser, and a single viewport showing the stars. The cubs immediately set about exploring, their claws clicking against the floor. The smallest leapt onto the bed, circling twice before curling into a shimmering ball of silver blue. The other 2 sat by the viewport, eyes tracking the endless black outside. Adnan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I don't like this. Once we land, they'll control the entire narrative. They'll say you manipulated the cubs, they'll call it human trickery. And when Zapirians feel cornered, they don't compromise, they fight. Nahal sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers gently over the cub's scaled back. Its trill filled the chamber with soft vibrations, calming even Adnan's racing pulse. Maybe they'll fight, or maybe they'll listen. Either way, I won't betray the cubs. They've trusted me with their lives. I can't abandon them now. Her voice cracked just slightly at the end, and Adnan caught it. Beneath the iron resolve there was fear, but she had chosen to bear it. He sighed and lowered his voice. "You're either going to make history, Doctor, or get us both killed." The homeworld. 3 days later, the ship broke through the mist-wrapped atmosphere of Zafir Prime. Adnan had seen many worlds during his service, but nothing prepared him for this. The planet was a labyrinth of crystalline spires and scaled plains. Vast forests of metallic fronds stretched beneath skies that shimmered with auroras even at midday. Rivers of glowing minerals cut through the land like veins of molten light. The capital city rose ahead like a living fortress, colossal towers that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent patterns, as though the structures themselves were alive. Everywhere, the motifs of clanhood and lineage were carved into stone and metal, a constant reminder of tradition. The docking bay was already crowded. Zapirian citizens had gathered in ranks, their scales rippling with complex signals. At the forefront, a delegation of elders waited, their mandibles clicking in rhythmic disapproval. As Nahal stepped from the ship, the cubs flanking her, the murmurs began immediately. Spirals of disbelief coursed through the crowd's patterns. A human standing as clanmother? Impossible, unnatural. The cubs ignored the tension. They trotted confidently at her heels, their scales flashing calm blues and greens. The smallest glanced up at Nahal and chirped as though reassuring her. One elder hissed aloud. "Blasphemy! To allow our young to imprint upon an outsider is corruption." Another clicked her mandibles in sharper rhythm. "Or proof, if true, this changes all we know." The crowd rippled, half in outrage, half in stunned fascination. Belter raised one clawed hand. Instantly, silence fell. "The council will decide. Until then, the human and her companions will be confined to the citadel." The citadel. The council citadel was older than any other structure on Zafir Prime. It was said to be carved from the bones of a long-dead leviathan, its walls glistening with ancient scales that no tool could replicate. The air inside thrummed faintly with history, a reminder that tradition was not just law here, it was sacred. Nahal and Adnan were escorted to a chamber overlooking the Great Hall. Through the latticework walls, they could see the council floor below, a vast circle where dozens of elders would soon gather to decide their fate. The cubs, restless, prowled the chamber. Their scales flickered with unease, sensing the hostility outside. Nahal knelt and drew them close, whispering softly. The smallest pressed against her chest, trilling a sound that trembled with fear. Adnan stood by the window, watching the council floor fill with elders. "They'll tear you apart," he said quietly. "Not physically, politically. They'll paint you as a thief, a manipulator. They'll claim you tampered with the cubs, and the galaxy will believe them." Nahal stroked the cub's head, her eyes unwavering. "Then I'll show them the truth, not with arguments, with proof." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Adnan, they have to see what I see." He shook his head. "And if they refuse?" Nahal's hand tightened on the cub's scales. "Then the cubs and I will stand alone, but we will stand." The chamber door hissed open. A guard stepped inside, mandibles clicking in sharp rhythm. "It is time." The council drums began to sound, their deep resonance shaking the citadel walls. Nahal straightened, the cubs pressing into formation around her. Adnan fell into step beside her, his jaw set. They walked toward the great hall, where the fate of a bond no law had ever imagined would soon be decided. The great hall of the citadel stretched before them like a cathedral of living crystal. Every surface glimmered with the history of the Zapirian people, scales of long-dead leaders embedded into walls that pulsed faintly, echoing the rhythms of the present. The floor was a mosaic of bioluminescent tiles, each one responding to footsteps, illuminating the path with soft waves of light. Nahal's boots clicked against the floor. The cubs moved silently beside her, their tails flicking nervously but their eyes alert, catching every movement of the crowd. Adnan followed, shoulders tense, hands twitching near the hilt of his sidearm. He had no intention of drawing it. This was not a battlefield, but the instinct remained. At the center of the hall, a massive dais rose. The council sat in concentric rings, each elder marked with patterns of authority carved into their scales. Their mandibles clicked in sharp, measured rhythms, a language of judgment and warning. Nahal felt the weight of every stare, every subtle pulse of suspicion directed at her. High Matriarch Belter stepped forward. Her massive armor-like scales reflected the bioluminescence around her. "Citizens of Zafir Prime," she began, her voice low but commanding, vibrating the air like a tuned instrument. "We convene today to decide on a matter that challenges the very foundation of our society. The human Nahal claims the role of clanmother for our young, a human, foreign, untested, unpredictable, and yet 3 cubs have bonded with her. Is this acceptable?" A ripple ran through the hall. Some elders hissed in disapproval, others tilted their heads in cautious curiosity. The cubs stiffened. Their scales shimmered in tension, flickers of violet and silver signaling anxiety. An elder stepped forward, his mandibles clicking violently. "Blasphemy," he hissed. "A human has no place in our clan structures. To allow this is to erode tradition, to invite chaos." Another elder countered, voice smooth and measured. "Or perhaps," she said, "this human has revealed a truth we have long ignored. Compassion, empathy, connection, these are the foundations of survival. Tradition alone has not preserved us. Innovation has." Adnan's jaw tightened. He could feel Nahal's hand on his arm, steadying herself, her presence calm despite the storm around them. The cubs, sensing her resolve, mirrored her calm. The largest lifted its head, gold-patterned scales catching the light, projecting confidence into the room. Nahal stepped forward, clearing her throat. She spoke slowly, deliberately, every word chosen with care. "I am not here to replace your traditions. I am here to show what can exist when understanding crosses species. These cubs chose me, not because I am human, but because I offered guidance, protection, and trust. That trust should not be a crime. It should be honored." The hall erupted into murmurs, a cacophony of clicks and hisses. One elder slammed a claw against the dais, and the room fell silent. "Proof, human, you speak of trust. Show us this proof." Nahal nodded and motioned toward the cubs. "Observe." The cubs moved into formation at her side. The smallest leapt onto the dais, scales glowing with rhythmic pulses, sending vibrations that resonated through the crystal floor. The crowd gasped. The pattern was not mere display, it was communication. The cub was projecting feelings, impressions of Nahal's actions, her protection, her guidance. Every elder could perceive it directly, a living testament to the bond. The largest cub stepped forward next, tail raised high. Its scales shimmered gold and crimson as it demonstrated an advanced maneuver the cub had only performed in Nahal's presence. The crowd murmured again, proof that the cubs had learned, adapted, and thrived under her care. High Matriarch Belter's eyes narrowed, scanning the chamber. "And yet," she said slowly, "the concern remains. What if this influence spreads? What if other humans attempt to imprint on our young?" Nahal's voice rang out, unwavering. "Then they will have to earn it. Trust is not granted, it is proven, and that is the test of any bond, human or Zapirian." The chamber shifted uncomfortably. Some elders whispered, debating quietly, their signals flickering with tension. Others leaned forward, intrigued. One of the younger elders spoke boldly. "Perhaps the human has shown us that adaptability can exist without disrespecting tradition. Perhaps compassion is not weakness." A sudden tremor shook the hall. The cubs stiffened. The crystal walls quivered faintly, and a low hum filled the air. Outside, the skies darkened unexpectedly, an environmental anomaly or a warning from the planet itself. No one could tell. A group of hardline elders hissed sharply. "Manipulation," one cried. "The human commands the cub's behavior through unknown means. She uses magic or worse, technology." Nahal's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. She stepped forward again. "No magic, no trickery, just observation, patience, and care. The same things that make your species great can make humans great. We share the same principles of trust, courage, and love." The cubs suddenly shifted, moving as one. Their tails rose, scales flickering in unison, sending synchronized vibrations throughout the chamber. Every elder could feel it, not just see it. The message was clear. Unity, loyalty, and courage, even across species, were possible. The murmurs turned into shocked silence. No one had anticipated this demonstration of connection. Even the harshest critics faltered, uncertainty flickering across their patterned scales. High Matriarch Belter's mandibles clicked sharply. "We will deliberate, but be warned, the decision is not solely about the cubs, it is about the balance of our society. Human, your actions will resonate far beyond this hall." Nahal's pulse raced. The cubs pressed close, their scales shimmering in reassurance. Adnan whispered, "Whatever happens, they've seen something today, something real." The council withdrew to deliberate, leaving Nahal, the cubs, and Adnan alone in the chamber. The tension was suffocating, yet within it, a fragile thread of hope remained. The halls outside the great citadel were quieter than usual, but not empty. Faint echoes of footsteps bounced against the living crystal walls, masking the presence of those who moved with purpose and secrecy. Nahal led the cubs and Adnan down a side corridor, keeping a wary eye on every reflection, every shimmer of movement. The weight of the council's pending verdict hung over them like a storm cloud. The cubs padded beside her, their small forms radiating nervous energy. The largest Rill turned occasionally to glance at Nahal, a silent question in its gold-flecked gaze. The middle cub, Sierra, fidgeted, shifting her scales with nervous silver flashes, and the smallest Min pressed close to Nahal's side, trusting instinctively in her protection. Adnan whispered, his voice low. "I don't like this. The council may be deliberating, but there are others who won't wait for their decision. Factions, hardliners, they've been watching. I can feel it." Nahal's jaw tightened. She had sensed it too. The cubs had picked up on subtle vibrations in the walls, patterns of movement that didn't belong to ordinary Zapirian activity. Someone was orchestrating events from the shadows. Suddenly the ground trembled beneath them, faint but insistent. The cubs froze, tails coiling, their scales pulsing in alert patterns. Then a low hum filled the corridor, unnatural in origin. Adnan's hand went to the comlink on his wrist. "Security sweep, nothing. Sensors are blind." Nahal crouched, signaling the cubs to stay close. "It's here. Someone wants to test us." From the corner of her vision, a dark shape detached from the wall. A Zapirian figure clad in ceremonial black, mandibles clicking softly. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, almost blending with the crystal shadows. The figure's eyes glowed faint red, a symbol of a clandestine faction known only as the Eclipsed Mandible. "Step aside, human," the figure hissed, claws gleaming. "The cubs belong to the galaxy, not to your fragile compassion. They will be reclaimed for the purity of tradition." Nahal stepped in front of the cubs, heart hammering but mind clear. "You'll have to go through me," she said, voice firm. "I won't let you hurt them." The figure lunged with shocking speed. The cubs scattered instinctively, each one darting in patterns they had learned from Nahal's training, but the Eclipsed Mandible anticipated their moves. Rill's tail flicked to knock a device from the attacker's claw, a small, humming disruptor meant to incapacitate neural connections. Sparks flew across the corridor, casting jagged light across their faces. Sierra screamed a sharp warning, her scales flaring a brilliant silver. Min leapt onto Nahal's shoulders, claws digging in for balance. The cubs' instincts, sharpened under human guidance, were now saving all their lives. Adnan drew his weapon, a compact energy pulse pistol aiming at the shadowy attacker. "We don't have much time," he shouted. He fired, the pulse hitting the figure's left arm. Sparks erupted, but the figure only hissed and retracted, regrouping. Nahal's mind raced. She had to think fast. The cubs' abilities weren't just tricks, they were communication, coordination, and intuition amplified by trust. Min, flash pattern 3, Rill, shield formation. Immediately, the cubs moved with synchronized precision. Min's scales pulsed rapidly, sending a signal through the crystalline walls, subtly destabilizing the corridor's structure. Rill and Sierra created a moving barrier around Nahal, their tails swinging in arcs that deflected the disruptor's energy pulses. The Eclipsed Mandible faltered, momentarily disoriented by the cubs' unorthodox coordination. Nahal took advantage. She lunged, sweeping the attacker's feet with a calculated move she had learned in combat training long ago. The figure stumbled, crashing into the walls. The corridor's crystal panels reverberated with the impact, echoing like thunder. Adnan stepped forward, pointing his weapon again. "Now, human, do it now." Nahal hesitated, knowing she had a choice. Strike the attacker with lethal force or use the cubs' abilities to disable them safely. She chose the latter. Holding out her hand, she concentrated, channeling the cubs, synchronized vibrations, the rhythms of their trust and loyalty. A wave of energy rippled outward, not destructive, but overwhelming, searing through neural circuits, temporarily paralyzing the Eclipsed Mandible. The attacker collapsed, immobile but alive. Nahal exhaled sharply, her pulse racing. The cubs padded to her side, scales dimming from alert patterns to soft, calm hues. Adnan holstered his weapon, shaking his head in disbelief. That was something else. Before they could move, a faint alarm chimed throughout the citadel. The council's chamber doors opened abruptly. Zapirian security forces swarmed the corridors, drawn by the disturbance. The paralyzed figure was seized and carried away, silent and threatening even in captivity. Nahal looked at the cubs, pride swelling in her chest. "You see, sometimes trust and ingenuity are stronger than brute force," she said softly. The cubs responded with gentle pulses, an acknowledgement she could feel in her bones. But the threat had not ended. The eclipsed mandible were only one faction among many. Someone high up in the shadows had orchestrated this, testing Nahal and the cubs, evaluating their weaknesses. And now the council's verdict loomed even larger. If they could be seen as dangerous or as catalysts for chaos, their bond could be used against them, manipulated into a political tool to incite war between clans. Adnan's voice was quiet but firm. "We've shown them what you're capable of, but they'll come back, harder, smarter, and this time they won't be alone." Nahal's hand rested on Ril's head. The cub's scales shimmered, radiating warmth and determination. "Then we'll be ready," she said, "together." As they turned back toward the council chamber, an ominous ripple passed through the city's streets. Far above, shadowy ships moved silently through the clouds, barely visible, their purpose unknown but unmistakable. The galaxy had taken notice of Nahal and the cubs, and some of it was hungry for control. The council chamber gleamed under the ambient glow of living crystal, its walls resonating with a soft hum as if the structure itself was alive and listening. Nahal, the cubs, and Adnan stepped inside, the atmosphere thick with tension. Representatives of the 12 major Zapirian clans occupied the elevated semicircle seats, each figure radiating authority, history, and suspicion. Ril, Sierra, and Min clung close to Nahal, their small bodies vibrating with quiet caution. Even after the eclipsed mandible attack, they sensed the undercurrents of politics swirling like storms above their heads. Nahal knew this wasn't just about survival. It was about perception, alliances, and the raw power of influence. The Grand Matriarch, an imposing Zapirian elder named Vera, raised her claws, calling the chamber to silence. Her crystalline form shimmered with subtle shifts of violet and gold, the sign of her experience and authority. "Dr. Nahal," she began, her voice echoing like chimes in a cathedral, "the Council has reviewed the reports concerning your actions and the events involving the cubs." Nahal swallowed, feeling the weight of every eye on her. She knew some members viewed humans with disdain, labeling them reckless, unpredictable. Others were genuinely curious, intrigued by the results she had achieved through compassion and collaboration. Vera's multifaceted eyes focused on the cubs. "You have demonstrated an unusual bond with these young Zapirians. Your methods, unorthodox but effective. Yet the attack by the eclipsed mandible has raised concerns." Adnan stepped subtly to Nahal's side, whispering, "Every word matters. They are testing the limits of your influence." Nahal nodded, her mind running through every detail, every moment that had led them here. She took a breath. "Council members, the cubs are not tools for power. They are living beings with thoughts, instincts, and potential. My goal has always been to protect them, to nurture them, so that they may grow into leaders capable of shaping a galaxy where cooperation, not fear, guides our future." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some counselors clicked their mandibles, intrigued. Others stiffened, wary. The Grand Matriarch raised a claw again, calling for silence. "Your intentions are clear, human," Vera said slowly. "But clarity alone does not absolve risk. The cubs are symbols of your influence. If you fail, it could spark chaos across the clans. And yet, if you succeed," her voice softened almost imperceptibly, "it could shift the balance of power in ways we have not imagined." The chamber lights dimmed slightly as a holographic display materialized, showing the intricate networks of the galaxy, the trade routes, the influence zones, the territories held by rival factions. Lines of red pulsed in areas dominated by traditionalist hardliners, green-marked zones of emerging cooperation. The cubs' potential influence could tip this delicate balance. Ril stepped forward, surprisingly bold, his tail brushing the crystal floor. His golden eyes met Nahal's. She gave a reassuring nod. Sierra's silver scales flickered with anxious energy, while Min's soft glow was steady, a beacon of trust. The council noticed. The presence of the cubs, alive and responsive, added weight to Nahal's argument. After a long pause, Vera's voice rang again, firm and unwavering. "We have reached a decision." Every eye in the chamber sharpened, waiting for the verdict. Nahal's heart pounded. The cubs instinctively pressed closer, reading her tension. Adnan's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, offering silent support. Vera continued, Dr. Nahul, you and the cubs shall remain under council supervision, but you are hereby granted provisional guardianship. Your methods shall continue under observation for a trial period of 5 standard cycles. Any actions that endanger the cubs or the stability of the clans will result in immediate revocation. A cautious relief washed over Nahul, but it was tempered by the gravity of what had been said. The trial period was short in galactic terms. It was enough for some factions to plot, to test, to challenge. Furthermore, Vera added, her tone sharp, the eclipsed mandible attack was only a harbinger. Intelligence reports indicate that larger factions are mobilizing, forces unseen by the Council, seeking to manipulate the cubs and their guardian for their own ends. You are to prepare for external threats. The galaxy watches. A collective shiver passed through the chamber. The cubs' scales pulsed in unison, sensing the danger, their instincts heightened by the forewarning. Adnan's voice was steady but tense. External forces, this is bigger than the eclipsed mandible. Someone is orchestrating an attack beyond anything we've faced. Nahul's mind raced. They had survived one trial, but now the stakes had multiplied exponentially. Whoever was behind this shadow campaign had intelligence, resources, and patience. They would strike not just to seize the cubs, but to destabilize the galaxy's fragile balance. As they left the chamber, the streets outside seemed calmer than before, but Nahul knew appearances were deceptive. Ships glided silently above, cloaked in shadows, observing every movement. She felt the weight of responsibility press down harder. Protecting the cubs was no longer just about guiding them. It was about safeguarding the potential for unity and perhaps survival across multiple star systems. That night, as Nahul sat in her quarters with the cubs, she mapped out strategies, contingencies, and escape routes. Rill's tail gently tapped her hand, a reminder of the life she had vowed to protect. Sierra leaned against her side, her scales flickering with worry and curiosity. Min rested quietly, radiating trust and calm. Nahul whispered, We've passed the first hurdle, but the war for the galaxy has only just begun. Outside, in the shadows of the city, figures watched from the cloaked ships. Their eyes glowed faintly through their helmets. Messages were relayed in code, coordinates set, and weapons calibrated. The campaign against Nahul and the cubs was about to escalate, far beyond what anyone in the Citadel could anticipate. The galaxy was on the edge of a storm, and Nahul, a human among aliens, was at its center, with 3 small cubs whose potential could either save or shatter worlds. The first warning came as a distant tremor through the Citadel. Not through the ground, the city floated on a gravity field, but through the subtle hum of the crystal lattice. Sensors on every level flickered erratically. Nahul's instincts flared. She had felt this kind of vibration before on the outskirts of the eclipsed mandible ambush. Something massive was approaching. Rill, Sierra, Min, stay close, she instructed, her voice calm but urgent. The cub's scales shimmered in response, sensing the tension radiating from her. Adnan appeared beside her, eyes scanning the horizon displays. It's a fleet, he muttered. Cloaked until the last moment, too precise to be random. Whoever's behind this knows our every move. The Citadel's main viewing platform revealed a shadow creeping across space, a swarm of ships larger than anything in the Council archives. Their hulls absorbed light, making them nearly invisible, except for the faint, ominous trails of energy pulsing from their engines. They're here for the cubs, Nahul whispered, almost to herself. Her mind raced through the tactical data she had memorized. She had 100 contingency plans, but nothing on this scale. Without warning, a blaring alarm cut through the Citadel, red lights bathing the crystalline towers in a harsh glow. Council guards scrambled to their stations, and holographic shields began rising around critical sectors. The first wave struck like a lightning storm. Cloaked vessels phased into view only meters from the Citadel's outer barrier, firing energy projectiles that scorched the protective shields. The cubs hissed and flinched, instinctive fear sharpening their senses. Move, Nahul yelled. She activated a portable field generator she had engineered weeks before, a human innovation meant to mask energy signatures. The cubs were her shield. They had to be hidden from these attackers who sought to manipulate them. Rill's golden eyes glowed fiercely as he leaped into the energy field, emitting a pulse that destabilized the incoming weapons. Sierra's silver scales reflected the energy, refracting it into blinding bursts that confused the attackers' targeting systems. Min's soft glow expanded, emitting a resonance frequency that interfered with the enemy's sensors. Together, they became a living weapon, one human and three cubs against an armada. Nahal guided them, shouting commands and adjusting her field generator. Her heart pounded in synchrony with theirs. She realized then that the cubs' abilities were not just instinctive, they were linked to her, amplified by the bond they had built over months of trust and care. The attackers pressed harder, their hulls strong, their coordination flawless. The Citadel's defenses began to crack under sustained assault. Nahal knew that if the shield failed, the cubs would be captured, and the galaxy's fragile alliance between species would collapse. Adnan opened the Council's strategic vault, she ordered. We need every weapon, every drone, every defensive protocol in play. It's all or nothing. Adnan complied, and a cascade of holographic schematics filled the platform. Automated drones, long in storage due to bureaucratic hesitation, were deployed. Nahal rigged energy nets and kinetic pulses around the Citadel, her human ingenuity combining with alien technology. The cubs, responding to her guidance, moved with precise coordination. Rill tore through incoming projectiles with focused energy bursts. Sierra created reflective fields that deflected the enemy's fire, and Min projected a low-frequency resonance that destabilized the attackers' cloaking mechanisms. For hours, the battle raged. Ships exploded in showers of plasma and crystal fragments. The Citadel shuddered under the assault, and the sky above flickered with colors the human eye could barely process. Yet the attackers adapted quickly, forcing Nahal to innovate on the fly. She recalibrated drones to mimic the cubs' energy patterns, creating decoys that drew enemy fire. Then, in the midst of the chaos, Vera, the Grand Matriarch, appeared on the platform via a secure holographic feed. Nahal, the Council has approved full engagement authority. Use any means necessary to protect the cubs and the Citadel. With that authority, Nahal's tactical mind went into overdrive. She rerouted energy from the city's support systems into the shields, synchronized the cubs, resonance pulses, and coordinated drones to strike the attackers' command vessels. It worked. One by one, the enemy ships faltered, their formations breaking under the relentless improvisational assault. The cubs, guided by Nahal, became more than symbols. They were agents of survival, demonstrating a unity of species that had never been seen before. Finally, the last enemy ship attempted to flee, but Rill's pulse cut through its energy field, immobilizing it. The attacker's leader, a shadowy figure known only as Draction, appeared briefly on a holofeed, screaming a threat in a guttural alien tongue. "This is not over, human. The galaxy will bend to power." Nahal met his glare, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "The galaxy bends to cooperation, Draction, not fear." The attacker's feed cut off. Silence fell over the Citadel. The shields powered down gradually, and the cubs settled beside Nahal, their scales dimming from battle intensity to gentle luminescence. Exhausted but exhilarated, Nahal looked out over the city, its towers scarred but standing. The Council representatives, though shaken, acknowledged her achievement with cautious nods. Adnan, beside her, finally allowed himself a small smile. Vera's voice resonated across the platform. "Human, Dr. Nahal, you have proven not only ingenuity but the profound value of trust and compassion. You are hereby recognized as the provisional clanmother of the stars, guardian of these cubs and their potential. May your guidance shape the galaxy's future." The cubs' tails flicked happily, sensing the recognition, their bond with Nahal stronger than ever. Nahal allowed herself a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. The battle was won, but Nahal knew the war for understanding and unity across the galaxy would continue. Yet now, she had proof. Humanity's compassion, ingenuity, and courage could inspire even the most divided civilizations to act in unison. And in the quiet moments that followed, as the Citadel repaired itself and the stars shimmered above, Nahal realized something profound. She had started as a human among aliens, an outsider striving to protect three cubs. Now, together, they had become symbols of hope, a beacon that might one day guide countless species toward a shared future. The galaxy had not just witnessed the survival of a human and three cubs, it had seen the birth of a clanmother of the stars. As she held the cubs close, their warmth and light mingling with her own, Nahal whispered softly, "We did it, but this is only the beginning." Far beyond the Citadel, in the shadowed reaches of the galaxy, hidden fleets stirred. Some would rise to challenge them again, Others might seek alliance, drawn by the stories of courage and unity. And so, the legend of Dr. Nahul and the three Zapirian cubs began to ripple across the stars, a tale of hope, ingenuity, and the boundless power of trust between species. Months later, distant colonies report mysterious signals of unity, coordinated rescues, and interspecies collaboration, all bearing the unmistakable mark of Nahul's methods. The cubs grow into leaders under her guidance, each wielding abilities that, combined with human ingenuity, inspire new alliances. And somewhere in the dark corners of space, a new threat watches, intrigued and cautious, aware that the galaxy may have just gained its first true clan mother.